Good evening, everyone. So what we're going to do, we're just going to start off and give each of the panelists 5 minutes to explain their take on entrepreneurship in South Africa. Thereafter, we've got some questions for them. And then, of course, we want to open the floor to you.
In all the years that I've been in the banking environment, one conclusion is that the big money is in entrepreneurship. All the years that I've been involved with, the handling of wealth or the interaction with wealth, the big money again is in entrepreneurship, and it's probably the only. It's in the capitalist system. It's the only area where that glass ceiling is not non-existent, where there is no cap to what you can generate in terms of wealth. To join a big corporate, and it breaks my heart particularly when I see really talented African CAs or MBAs or whatever coming into the corporate world. You're sacrificing a good life, I think, for a great life, and I'm sure my panel colleagues would echo that. The other point that I'd like to just tease and work out is that we have a long way to go. So whilst I'm exposed to the large entrepreneurs here in Gauteng, we've got about 10,000 banking with us in Gauteng province, but they're quite established and they have turnovers between 10 and several hundred million rand. So that world's alive and well, but we're just nowhere where we need to be. If you go to Nigeria, to Lagos, and you walk to your office and you break a heel, there'll be someone there to ensure that you've got some flip-flops. They'll fix your shoes in the next half an hour, and by the time you've settled behind your desk in your office in Lagos, that heel would have been repaired. Now, we just don't have that thinking here. The other tease, so we need to make it fashionable. We really do need to make it fashionable. If we could get the general psyche in South Africa thinking like that, you must support an entrepreneur. It goes for corporates, it goes for government.
Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of what is hindering entrepreneurship, as Howard has echoed. Lack of skills, poor education system, lack of funding, or I would say ability to access this funding, because there is funding in South Africa, social perceptions on entrepreneurship, and poor infrastructure. As much as we can highlight these challenges, I would like to talk on what we call the missing middle. What exactly is the missing middle? South Africa wants to promote job creation, so we tend to focus on high-impact entrepreneurs. These are the guys that have the skills because they've probably worked in corporates. They're very well educated because they have degrees. They know how to access funding because they've probably been in the banking or key sectors in the economy, and they have the required infrastructure. They have cars, so they're mobile. They live in urban areas, so they have facilities. They have access to high-speed internet and also have computers. These are the guys that can create enterprises that can employ more than 50 people. They can create enterprises that are very much involved in the key sectors of the economy. We definitely, as a country, have to focus on them, but I feel that we should not overlook the guys who are on the ground. These are the guys that have an entrepreneurial spirit, but they don't have the required skills. These are the guys who might have been exposed to substandard education, basically because they were born poor. These are the guys who are financially literate, the double entry accounting system, something that basic, they're not familiar with it. They don't know about corporate governance, they don't know about basic business compliancy. And also these are the guys who are in the rural and the peri-urban areas where access to information and business opportunities is not just a finger click away. So the reality is that these guys are the majority, but minority participants in our economy. And these guys are the missing middle. The country has to develop this missing middle, because how else are they going to become high-impact entrepreneurs that we require? So that's essentially my point of view this evening.
So I wanted to try and sum it up in 5 points about how to develop entrepreneurial spirit, and that name spirit, I think, is really important. So it's the ideas of beliefs that you can take forward. So the first belief I have, number 1, is this idea that it's more of a risk not to take a risk. And actually the regrets that you might have later because you never tried something are far worse than actually having tried it. And when I worked in London, I got into the ad industry as a PA, and people said, you're absolutely mad, you'll kill your career overnight if you start as a secretary. And I realized I was going to take that risk because that was my way in. Related to that, number 2 is this idea of feeling the fail. Allon talks about the importance of failure a lot. And it's vital to fail. And when you feel it, when you fail, feel that. Feel that trauma, because that is what gives you the building blocks to go forward. And so celebrate it, because every entrepreneur will make many mistakes in their life. Number 3 is this wonderful phrase we often use of the idea, which is have big ears. And what that means is listen. Listen and listen and listen. And when I was starting my advertising business back in South Africa, I would go around shamelessly asking advice from anybody. Can I have lunch with you? Can I pick your brain? I used to have a book, and I used to write down what they said, because the information you can glean from what other people think is happening on the ground is vital. Number 4 is this wonderful phrase, which is ideas aren't something you have, they are something you do. And it's as simple and as difficult as that. Because it's no good going, I've had this amazing idea, and it's not fair because somebody else did it. Well, they're the ones. The idea gets done. And my business, Homecoming Revolution, which is all about repatriating African talent from abroad back into the continent. We often say to those who aren't necessarily going to come back to work in corporate, they want to maybe come back as entrepreneurs. We often say to them, find those best practice models that are working abroad and come back home and put them in place here. And that's another thing to encourage you to do. Find something that's working really well abroad and do it here. And it's not about the uniqueness of the idea. It's about actually getting it done and doing it. And number 5 is this wonderful thing that I realized. It took me a while to get it. It is passion is tenacity. Now, I always thought that an entrepreneur needs to have a whole lot of things. 1 is passion, number 2 is tenacity, number 3 is this. They are the same thing. The more passionate you are, the tougher you are. The more passionate you feel about what you're doing, it will be impossible to give up. If you're not passionate about what you're doing as an entrepreneur, there's only so much that the human being can take in terms of being bashed down. But if you love what you do, that inbuilt toughness will be built in. Thank you.
I've got 4 points I want to talk about tonight. The first of which is entrepreneurs are important, not special. And I have a very contradictory point of view. I think entrepreneurship is overdone in terms of how we're promulgating it again and again and again and again. And what the unintended consequence of that is that there's an arrogance that I see amongst particularly young entrepreneurs that we're special and they're not special, okay? And we like better than them. So I think we be very careful about this messaging about how special entrepreneurs are. So we are as important as a nurse, we are as important as a teacher, as a plumber. We're important, we're not special. So that's point number 1. The second one, particularly aimed at the youth, is hard is not wrong. So we have a very, very schwal Cape Town view, like if I'm not in my zone, like, you know, like if it's hard, then it must be wrong. And the problem with that is that every time you start a business, it is hard. So we go, oh, well, that's obviously not the right thing for me, and you go Control-Alt-Delete, Control-Alt-Delete, and you keep starting again and again. And I see so many young entrepreneurs not accepting that this journey of entrepreneurship is a tough one, and that they have to persevere and push through. So hard is not wrong. Entrepreneurship is hard. That's the end of that story. It's just like life. Okay. Point number 3 is something that really I'm grappling with, is how do you train entrepreneurship? Because if I ask you all, who do you pay first? Do you pay the tax man if you've got a limited amount of money and come to month end and you've got just enough money to either pay the tax man or the landlord? Who do you pay first? Okay? So every entrepreneur in the room will know you pay the landlord because he'll catch you quicker. But in an environment where you're learning at one of the universities where it's effectively an institution that government supports, it's illegal to say that. But we all know that practically that's what you do. So entrepreneurial training lives in a paradox where the paradigm prevents you from very often training what is practically happening on the ground. And so I see very often in environments that teach entrepreneurship, they are bound to teach, in fact, what I think is the wrong thing. So that's something I grapple with. And finally, this whole notion of funding. I've been on record of saying that there is plenty money. There is plenty money chasing business. And Howard would attest to this. There is more money chasing good business than there are good businesses chasing money. And this is about an compelling economic right to exist. The issue isn't money. The issue is a compelling economic right to exist. And when entrepreneurs stop hiding behind this rock that the banks don't fund me and that no one understands me, when they get over that and get to understand that they're responsible for producing a compelling economic right to exist, the money will flow after them. Can't tell you how many venture capitalists, angel funders hover around Raizcorp in order to find those businesses with a compelling economic right to exist. They're hard to find. And so it's sort of get over this excuse that there is no money. There is plenty money. The entrepreneurial mindset is to say that if red tape is in my way, I'll find a way around it, and it'll prevent all the other guys. It's a barrier to entry to my industry, because if I find a way around it, then it prevents other people from getting into it. So I say that the real entrepreneurial spirit finds a way around it and doesn't use it as an excuse not to do it. And in a weird way, it culls the people without the ability to persevere through things. So it's almost like a self-selection tool. If you can make it through getting SIP's approval and getting a telecom account, like you already like a top entrepreneur.
Brands today that will survive have to be authentic. Gone are the days when you can have a television ad just blaring a message at the public and they listen to like sheep having to nod with no voice. In this day of social media, Bref and Dio are doing it fantastically. If they get something wrong, it'll go live on Twitter, people will tweet back instantly as a brand. If you're living and breathing your authenticity, if you've made a mistake, you say, whoops, that didn't work, let's try this. You're having conversations, you're allowing the public themselves to build your brand with you. It's very much about your internal, what your staff believe that you are, and living and eating and breathing that messaging in a very authentic way throughout.
You know when you're an entrepreneur because, naturally you possess those skills, but if you are in a corporate, there is also corporate entrepreneurship. If you are in a corporate and you're quite happy with your job, just be the best that you can be. But we have to advocate for the fact that entrepreneurship is not for everybody. The challenges are immense, but the rewards are high. But I would encourage people to just follow their passions